If Councillor Hanford moves what she wants, that will be the substantive. I think it's a bit of a. I think it's significantly enough different from the original motion that staff put in the report that I would prefer that we treat it as a new substantive rather than an amendment, if that's okay. And as I say, actually, if the Mayor were to allow you to move this first, it is a substantive regardless of what was in the report. So.
Right, so all we needed was a clarification. I need to know, is there anything else going to come up? Or this is just it? This is just it. So,
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Councillor Randall.
Thank you. Standing orders have been suspended, so I'd like to ask the Chief Executive, yes or no, whether he will release audio tapes of the 4 briefings the councillors had on the representation review. Will he make those audio recordings available to the public?
Mr. Chief Executive.
Your request is noted, Councillor Randall. I'll have a think about it.
Right.
So, Mr. Mayor.
So, hold on. Dale is going to be away soon.
Yeah, I just need to flag that we're going to lose Dale at some point soon. So if anyone is still harbouring any questions that they really want to ask Dale, now would be a good time to do it through you, Mr. Chair.
Right. Any specific question for Dale?
So
Councillor McCann. No. Councillor Pravanov, have you got a question for Dale?
I'm actually answering the question that you raised in the first instance. Is anything else is going to come up? And I'm going to, when this is being discussed as preparation, I would like to know how many people would be represented in those 2 community boards in comparison to the number in Waikanae. Just flagging that now. Thank you.
My question for Dale was, we've got amendments or a new motion, depending on which way you want to look at it. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have. It's just come through now, so I'm reading it now.
So, for advice to council, when councils are making new decisions where there haven't been, where the advice perhaps and the research hasn't occurred in the past, is this dangerous territory to start making decisions like this on the fly rather than following through an iterative process?
Councils can do this and have done that. We had a situation in Whangarei where at the final proposal they completely threw out what was on the agenda and went for a completely different at large, but that was as a result of submission, so there was a basis for that. I think I explained earlier that we do have submissions around this particular issue, and how it's addressed can be looked at 2 different ways, but certainly what is proposed flows on from a submission, so I think that's on quite strong ground.
Chief Executive.
Can I just add, though, making decisions on the fly is a pertinent point, though, because stuff like this is coming up if there hasn't been enough time and space for staff to analyse it and give you some of the background to what the implications are, mean you are making it on the fly.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through the Chair, a question for Dale. Are you aware that sort of the nuts and bolts on this are covered off in the report in Appendix 7, page 83, where it's got the details of the Raumati subdivision, which would essentially be the boundaries of the new community board? So other than the financial implications, which would be worked through in part, depending on what delegations are given to community boards, the basics of a separate community board are there, including like a map showing what the possible subdivision could be. So we're not completely flying blind here, to be fair, and we've discussed this extensively at workshops and briefings, so it's not like there hasn't been research on this.
And the agenda has been made available to the public as well.
Yep.
Right. Okay, look, it's very clear there's no other issues involved apart from this new motion, substantive motion. So I want to go back to reconvening with the standing orders in place. I move that's now Back on. Councillor Compton seconded. All in favour say aye. Okay. So,
I'd
pardon?
like to move items 95 to 99 on the agenda, please. As they stand on the agenda.
Have I got a seconder? Councillor McCann. Now, you've moved the whole lot one go.
Yes?
Okay. Right of intro.
So I won't be saying much about this today because there was a public workshop which is available last week. We've discussed this. As councillors and given staff a steer, which is what came to the table today. I'd like to thank the staff, Empathy Design. Dale, thank you very much for your work. And if you could please pass that on to your colleagues as well. I'd like to thank all the submitters. Over 500 people submitted into this process, and we've listened. And that's why we've got what we have in front of us today. I'm very comfortable with where we've come to in terms of providing extra representation for Raumati without incurring a lot of extra cost and impost on ratepayers and staff. So I'm very happy to move these recommendations today, and thanks to staff and thanks to my fellow elected members.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you. I would just encourage any councillors who do want to have a debate and on having a separate Raumati Community Board to vote this down, so that we can actually have that debate. In our submissions, our community, Raumati in particular, their community and business leaders have told us that they're concerned about how they get subsumed into Parapara Umu. And I think by actually by not having a debate on a separate Raumati Community Board, we're actually fulfilling that prophecy. And I think that would be very unfortunate. I think there's division around the table about how clear the steer was from the last workshop. And I think in order to do it justice and do democracy justice, we should have that debate on the motions that have been put forward by Councillor Hanford. So I'd encourage any councillors who do support our Raumati Community Board to vote this down, and then we can move the new motions around that.
Yeah, I'd just like to total call Councillor Copton's point. I was a little bit too slow to my to my buzzer there to move the amendments, but yeah, I would encourage those who are interested in having this conversation, which I think is one that we have the right to have, and our community has the right to also hear in this kind of way. So yeah, if we're open to that, then I think we should vote this down.
I support the motion as it stands. We've had many workshops, as Councillor Holborough has pointed out. We've had workshops, we've had the community come and speak to us over 2 days of hearings. We also need to reflect as well, back when we were doing a long-term plan, we listened to the Raumati community, and they came forth, their business community came forth and wanted extra representation through a business association where our economic development team, along with consultants, are supporting them in the tune of over $10,000 in this first financial year. So I think that with what we are passing today, having a joint or a joint Raumati and Paraparaumu board with having 2 representations from Raumati as a definite, not just as a could happen, I think that it's fair and an equal representation for the Raumati community. And considering in 3 years' time we could potentially be going through this process again through our Maori wards if our iwi wish to, at that point we could potentially have another look at it. But in the meantime, I'm quite happy with the status quo. I actually don't see the Raumati population growing extensively, not like other areas in our district as well. So that is also something that I think that we should keep in mind.
And as I say, I have sat here for hours and hours working through this process with all of my colleagues, and I believe that today we have a very apt situation, and I fully endorse this.
Could I just say something?
No. You got right of reply.
I just want to say that it wasn't my intention to shut down debate on Aotearoa Community Board. Anybody who wants to
So you're
vote-
making a point of
anybody
clarification.
Anybody who wants to argue against this, and as part of that argue in favour of a separate community board, I would have thought would be free to do so.
Councillor Elliott, I've already said she's made a clarification of a point. Councillor Coates.
Thank you. I really enjoy seeing democracy in action and bringing these recommendations to the table, whether they are agreed to or not, or changed or amended or not, is a democratic right of the representatives of the people. And to have elected members talk down those that exercise that right in this forum is really, really disappointing. I'm looking forward to this conversation and this debate, and I think that we should all do due diligence to it and give it time. Good decisions come out of good discussion and good information. Thank you.
Yeah, I think as others have said, we have spent weeks and hours talking about this through briefings and workshops. Workshops have run over time, which is that's part of the nature of the job, but I think it demonstrates that we've allowed that discussion to continue for all different options and added options to be explored. Everyone has had their chance at putting forward their views, and some more than once, and that's fine. That's part of democracy and part of the process. But to come to a meeting with a formal paper and suggest changes that were canvassed through a workshop, these are not changes that we haven't considered, that we have considered and we have discussed. There's debate around the table whether a steer was given. I mean, my recollection, and I know that of some of my other colleagues, was that there was a steer sought from the chair at the time, and that was given, and hence why the paper is written in the way that it is with the subdivided Raumati Community Board, Raumati and Paraparaumu Community Board. There's been some criticism around the process, and we've heard from Dale today that he felt, in his experience, that the process was robust. And I, despite that criticism, I'm certainly confident that we have done our job in being thorough in testing things with the community and hearing feedback. And my fear was that if we went to the Commission with the status quo, having been told previously that it needed to be amended, that without the robust discussion that we've had and the 560 plus submissions and a very clear steer from the community, that we wouldn't be on as good a standing with the Local Government Commission in suggesting the status quo as that we might be with an adjusted status quo as we have today. I will note that the submissions, although many, were as an elected member who's been around for a while, were very familiar names within those submissions. A lot of them grant recipients, a lot of them with people that had engaged with the board, and that's fine, that's part of the process. But what it says to me is that we've heard from people that actually have had the support of community boards, often through the form of grants, and it hasn't actually demonstrated that concern that we had about those segments of the communities that don't typically engage with the local government process that we have as councils, and specifically with community boards. Now, I'm comfortable with supporting the option today of boards, whether they be subdivided or whatever, based on that feedback. But I do want to indicate that, yes, we have heard from the community, but we've heard from that segment of the community that use that process, and it hasn't necessarily addressed those that are the minority groups and those views that aren't as well heard. An interesting part for me was the perspective, although we'd started canvas views from our iwi partners, was the submission from Ngā Hapu o Otaki, and the importance that they put on the Otaki ward. And that, for me, I guess, drove my support for the mixed model and the wards as they sit. We've heard arguments for a separate Waikanae ward, which would give additional councillors, and I absolutely understand that position. And I think as elected members, we talked about a square peg in a round hole. If you moved all the requirements of local government commission, the population numbers, the mesh blocks and so forth, we would potentially be looking at a completely different model. But in adjusting the Waikanae ward to suit that, by bringing Te Horo in, essentially you're fixing one community and impacting another. And that for me isn't right either. So hence why I'll be supporting the recommendations today. I do want to acknowledge the push for the Raumati Community Board. I've said to people offline, you know, my heart says yes and my head says no. We heard through submissions that there are issues with community boards. That's just not our own views. That's from submitters that acknowledge that there are issues with community boards. And we have less than a year left in this term to work with community boards and try and lift the performance of those boards. And one thing that I've always sort of used in life is that whole when in a hole, stop digging. And I think we need to work on increasing the performance of the boards, and I think the boards need to work on increasing the performance of the boards before we look at adding a whole nother board with all the bells and whistles that go with that, and the group managers and the resources and so forth. What was interesting through the submissions and the hearings was the community boards' criticism or complaints about the lack of support or resources, which is somewhat dismissed by the report, which highlights all of the resources and support that are actually given to community boards, which I would argue is actually the same level of resources and support that is given to councillors in the form of access to group managers and staff and emails and phone calls and so forth. So for me, the subdivided Paraparaumu Raumati Community Board addresses the concerns around Raumati representation. I think we do need to be careful that we don't look at the current circumstances and say, well, so-and-so's elected to there, Sophie's doing this, so she'll do that. Sophie may not be around next traineum. Martin may live in a certain area and may not be around next traineum. So we need to look at representation that provides an opportunity for people to be represented within that area, not just because the mayor lives in Otaki or a ward councillor lives or two lives in Otaki or Te Horo. So I'll be supporting the recommendations as they stand. I would welcome a discussion if there was a future representation review and the performance of boards were lifted and they were functioning well within the community, and look at adding a Raumati Community Board. I want to finish by acknowledging the work that the staff have put into this. There was a process that was suggested that was independent. I supported that. Other councillors didn't. That's fine. We have this collective process, but through this, staff have been called liars. They have been referred to as leading the councillors and leading the process, amongst other claims around the influence from the organisation. And I think that is wrong. And I think that certainly for some people need to consider putting that right with those involved, because certainly, as we've heard from Dale, it has been a very thorough process. It is the council that decides the option that goes out, and that is what we did based on the information that we had. And so I'll be supporting this recommendation today and looking forward to the debate if it isn't successful and there is the other option put forward.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I'm not going to relitigate a whole heap of stuff. I think it's a bit unfortunate that this hasn't been addressed first and we've gone straight to the stage that we're at. There are 33,000 people approximately in the Paraparaumu Raumati Community Board area, and I don't think it's very fair that one community board looks after that amount of people, which I have expressed before. As a ward councillor, I am elected by Paraparaumu, yet I am focusing also on Raumati and Raumati South. I have no issue with that as part of the responsibility I've taken on board in this role, but it would be nice to actually focus on my ward as the other councillors are able to do. So all other things aside, I won't be supporting this, but will be supporting the recommendations that have been made or the amendments that have been made. Thank you.
Councillor McCann.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will be supporting the current recommendations, and I think there are two things which are important to me. There's the insinuation that we're not allowing this debate to be had, and that to me doesn't sit right. We have sat around this table in various configurations with and without masks for months and months and discussed a range of options, and we've got to what we were thought was a clear direction. One of the things that I've noticed in that discussion, and we as councillors have to own this, is that when steers are made and when a direction is taken, when we don't like that steer, revisiting that over and over again chews up more and more valuable time. And when we've said we've run out of time to discuss things, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and go, well, is that because we've used our time in the most constructive way, or have we raised the same issues which the majority of councillors have said we've got a solution to this, we need to move on. So I think we need to look in the mirror about our own process, about how we come to these decisions and use our time appropriately. I think the issues have been covered. I'm happy, while I'll be voting for this, if it is goes down, then we'll have another further debate, one which I think we should have had previously. One of the things that I've noticed is that there was a steer from councillors to remove community boards, and sure enough, we got feedback from the community that wasn't the direction of travel. But what the community has not heard is some of the reasons why councillors took that steer, which is that there are serious concerns about some of the ability of community boards to deliver. And one of the things I and many other councillors have talked about is the need to make sure that we rectify that. And that means, in my mind, working with the organisations that we've currently got, not adding another community board, where we have had a small amount of advice about the increased resources required by the staff, increased resources that will be paid for by our community. So I think we have to try and balance those things. Simply having more of one thing that many of us think is not working to perfection does not solve the problem. We've actually got to work out how our community boards in different parts of our area are working well and why some of them are not. I personally would like to thank the staff for all the work they've done. I know that Councillor Compton and I, and please correct me, Councillor, if I'm wrong, supported the notion that we retained this process in-house. And partly the reason that I did that, and I can't remember how long ago it was, it feels like well over a year, was that we needed to take responsibility and ownership of this. And what I've heard when we agree on a particular direction, whether it's an organisation going out and talking to our constituents, is that if the result isn't the one that you wanted, we then attack the process. Now, I know it was a split vote, and with hindsight, I might have made a different decision, not because of the competence of our staff or anyone involved in the process, but because the public had another way to say we were not following a good process because it was in-house. I really do reject that, and I think the staff have worked extremely hard. And I think we've just got to keep remembering, when we don't get the result we want, it is not necessarily the fault of the staff. Sometimes that's just, you get an answer you don't like. So I do want to commend the staff, and I would like to apologise for all those people who have said ridiculously horrible things in this process. I know today that there have been more mannered criticisms where we've been told we're nuts, and in the same speech, we know that community board member has told us not to follow the rules and to follow the rules. We actually need to ensure that when we have a representational review about what local government looks like, that the message is quite clearly sent to government that we are incredibly constrained by legislation that is not fit for purpose. And that makes us look like idiots from time to time when we try and fit the square peg round hole. So I think we've tried our absolute best to ensure that we give the time and effort and thought process into this legislation, but no matter which way you look at it, there will be people who agree or disagree, because the process, the legislation is somewhat flawed. So on that, I will be supporting the recommendations.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will keep this brief. I will not be supporting the motions on the table. We have 3 pages of recommendations before us, and they are going to be taken as one vote. That is not appropriate. Thank you.
Look, we can take it separately. And I intend to do that.
So just to clarify, if you understand standing orders, anybody can request they be taken one at a time.
I intend to do that anyway.
Moving them on block does not automatically require them to be taken on block. So it's a little unfortunate that people don't quite understand standing orders at this point.
Councillor Randall. You there, Councillor Randall?
Yeah, I'm here, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
You got your chance to speak on this?
No, I shall keep silent, Mr Mayor. I had my say against Councillor McCann, and I prefer to keep my mouth shut.
Very good. Look, the whole issue revolves around wanting a new community board, an extra community board. The actual issue is whether the current existing community boards are working well. The Paraparaumu Raumati Community Board, given the suggestion in this, on the motion here, the recommendation here to have a subdivided community board, will give Raumati a specific representation within the configuration. That is a good step to take in terms of structuring it. But at the end of the day, it depends on the type of people who are elected to those positions and how you use your existing powers to do maximum returns for the community. I go back to the email that I sent to all the community board members and the ward councillors appointed to that, giving you all a list of areas where the existing powers that you have can be leveraged without having to claim more power to do what? When you already have existing set of powers to do everything that you can possibly do, but it's not been exercised. So what the hell is the problem now wanting to have another community board when the community board in existence now can do the job? And on top of that, we put in the recommendation here to add 2 more members specifically for Raumati who want that. Staff had made a lot of work into this. We had gone through this process. The others have mentioned the fact that we had come and given a particular direction. The issue of representation is twofold, and I see it being fixed by the fact the Raumati will have 2 extra representatives in that through the subdivided recommendation for this particular board. And on top of that, whatever happens today, I am giving the community boards due warning that I'll be coming to your community boards and pushing this issue of the exercising of your own powers. You have asked you all to have a discussion and come back to me. None of you all have done that. And suddenly we are facing this. So I'm in complete support of the motion on the table. That's my 5-cent piece. Okay, 10 cents. Right of reply.
So as I said when I had a bit of a naughty second go, it wasn't my intention to shut down a debate about an extra community board today. In arguing against this proposition, you can argue for another one. It's not, they're not mutually exclusive. So I just hope that the process today doesn't influence anybody around the table to promote something which they wouldn't otherwise. So as the Mayor said, you know, this provides the extra representation from Raumati. It doesn't result in increased cost and workload for staff, which is already quite heavy with our 27 elected members that we have in our small district. Our 5 community boards that we have for our small district already, or 4, sorry, as it stands. So I implore people around the table to take a sensible view of this today and take this sensible step that's in front of us. As Councillor Coots has said, we can have other representation reviews. We can look at how our community boards are functioning and investigate the implications of having another community board, which we haven't investigated fully until now. So I just encourage people to vote for this today and repeat my thanks to the staff, and to talk about what Councillor McCann said too, which is, yeah, you've been through a bit over this whole review, and yeah, I look forward to the outcome today.
Right. The recommendations have been moved by Councillor Holbrook, seconded by Councillor McCann, but I'm going to take them each separately. The first one is recommendation 95. That's just a procedural one. All those in favor of recommendation 95 say aye. Those against? Carried. Recommendation 96. This is where we could have the recommended 96 is divided. So each point will be done separately before we come back to 96. 96.1. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Carried. All those against? All those against?
Division has been called, Mr. Mayor.
I can do the other way around. So all those against, put your hands up. All those for it?
I have to call it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Division was called, so if you ask for all in favour, please, and I'll call
All in
now.
favour?
Councillor Halliday, Buswell, Coots, the Mayor, Councillors Holborough and McCann. Oh, sorry. Put it up early, Councillor. Councillor Hanford as well is in favour.
Those against?
Councillor Compton, Councillor Pravanov.
And Councillor Randall.
And Councillor Randall.
Councillor Randall. Oh, I've got to remember to look there, thank you.
Yeah. So that's carried.
And Councillor Elliott.
That's carried.
Against?
I think so, yes.
Now 6.2.
That's carried.
All those in favour, put your hands up. All those against? Also again, division. All those in favour, put your hands up.
Councillor Hanford, early up. Councillor Buswell, Coots, the Mayor, Councillor Holborough, McCann and Elliott.
All those against?
I did not. Sorry. Councillor Halliday, did you have your hand up in favour?
Yeah, you did.
Sorry, I missed you, I think. Councillor Halliday in favour. Councillor Compton, Pravanov, against.
And Mr. Randall.
And Councillor Randall against. Thank you again.
That's carried. 96.3. All those are...
Indeed, 96.3.4 should be amended to read the Paikakariki Community Board.
So that remedy word is removed. Okay. So 96.3. All those in favour say aye. Yep.
They are?
The each point.
Oh.
Okay.
So we've just moved that, 96.2, but Councillor Pravanov is asking that.
Now it's 96.3.1 is what we're up to. She would like those ones to be taken separately. Is that correct, Councillor Pravanov? 96.3, each of the 4 board makeup she would like to be taken separately.
So we'll start with 96.2. 96.31. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? You're on division?
No, it's not.
Hold on. Just let's not. All those in favour. So division has been called for. All those in favour 96.31. Put your hands up.
Councillor Compton, Buswell, Coots, the Mayor, Councillors Holborough, McCann, Pravanov.
Those against? Those against?
Against, Councillors Halliday, Elliott, I'm assuming Councillor Randall?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So 96.31. No, it's carried. It's carried. So 96.3.2. All those in favour say aye. Those against? So all those in favour, put your hands up.
In favour, Councillors Hanford, Compton, Buswell, Coots, the Mayor, Councillors Holborough and McCann.
All those against?
Against, Councillors Halliday, Elliott, Pravanov. Councillor Randall against?
Yes.
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I haven't had time. I'm in favour of it.
So are you in favour of that one, Councillor Randall?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That's carried. Yep.
Yeah, there we go. Just in terms of the substantive motion 96.3, we seem to move straight to 96.3.1 and move that first. So I'm a little bit confused about why we haven't moved that.
No, I'll go back to it.
Right, okay, so you're going to...
Yeah, otherwise, if you move that, then all the subclauses all get moved.
But then in terms of amending the subclauses to add something in, we do that after the substantive motion is moved or during this time?
Councillor, you're meant to move an amendment when it was your turn to speak, and then we would vote on the amendment before we go back to the substantive. So you're at the point now where the chair will have to allow you to move an amendment as you're going, and that's his discretion. But I think we have to give, my advice will be, give some leeway, because clearly councillors weren't quite aware of that. So at this point, if you don't like 96.3.3, if we're up to that, it actually would be the time that you need to move an amendment.
The amendment. So we are at that point now.
So can I just clarify actually what 96.3.3 reads, please?
At the moment, you've got what you're reading now. Otherwise, you're going back. It depends on the amendment you want to put up.
Okay.
So are you wanting to amend that?
So 96.3.3 to be amended to Paraparaumu Community Board, 4 elected members, 2 Paraparaumu Ward councillors appointed. Yeah, might as well do it at the same time then. Also,
we're taking them one at a time.
Oh, we're taking them. Okay, so I can't. So yeah, I'll move that. I'll move that amendment then. That makes sense.
Sorry, can we just have the wording repeated so that
Yep.
people can catch it?
Sure. So yes. Oh, yeah. It will be in the. It's as per the. Yeah. Apologies that it's taking me. I'm just getting my head around this. Have you got the wording, Tanika? Just as per, yeah. Thank you.
So have you got that?
Yes.
So it's up.
that would be helpful, Councillor, because we might as well do the two changes that you want, get staff able to load them up. Thank you, that would be helpful.
Even a change to then the substantive motion 96.3 worked up, just so when we get to it, as that amendment we've signalled will be moved. So,
is that okay, Mr. Mayor? We'll
just to give a heads
minutes.
up. Yeah.
When now?
Now.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, it's my bad too.
So,
That's going to cost you lots of.
You might as well just load all of them up then. So